All right, we are green light. Stephanie Edmonds, welcome to the Terrain Theory Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited too. I wanted to start with hearing about your little adventure during COVID because it sounds like that was really the spark or the catalyst for a big pivot in your life.
I think, as with many people, that's sort of, I make a joke that time is BC, which means before COVID, and AC, which means after COVID. Um, so, yeah, I mean, back in 2020, well, really starting in 2016, I became a New York City high school history teacher. I was very dedicated to my craft. I was also a recently new mother. My son was also born in 2016. And I was that dedicated public school teacher. I was there early, I stayed late, I made my classroom look good. I was highly rated. Though, I did have my little run-ins with the system along the way as well, but nonetheless, it didn't affect my ratings. My principal was good at kind of separating the two, I guess, for people who he appreciated. Maybe not the case if he wasn't so fond of somebody, but I digress. So I was a New York City public school teacher. I was doing my thing, saw myself, working my way up the chain, going into administration, potentially being a principal. And my own principal recognized that I very easily got tenure in 2020. He was like, just write a letter of recommendation and I'll sign it. I see you, going on to be a really good principal. And then, like you said, 2020 happened. The schools shut down. And at first, I was like, oh, 2 weeks. Yeah, let's like just see what's going on here. Because I was like, I think the government's lying to us in the beginning, right? They were like downplaying everything. And I was like, ooh, something seems weird going on here. And Friday the 13th, I actually called out of work and I made a post on my Instagram and I was like, my Instagram to students. And I would not normally ever do this. I was like, I'm calling out of work today because I think that there's something going on with this coronavirus. And I don't trust what they're telling us. And so I actually called out early and I was like, let's do the 2 weeks. But then once those 2 weeks passed and I kind of like got my bearings, it was like, I was like, oh, I don't think that this is exactly right. I actually think that we can open up and get back to life. And they seem like they want to keep this shutdown going. And then I remember distinctly mid-April, I made another post on my Instagram holding up like a pack of vitamins and a green smoothie and being like, if the healthiest thing that you can do or the most important thing you can do to protect yourself from COVID is to be healthy, is to take your vitamins, eat well, get outside and exercise. And that was sort of my politically correct way of saying, I don't agree with what's going on here. And then from there, I just saw like at first, everybody was really gung ho. My classes were full of students and they were so grateful for the space. And then about that time, mid April, students stopped showing up. And I have high school kids. And so I'm like calling them, I'm trying to see what's going on and where they are. And I'm in the Bronx too. So most of my students are lower income. A lot of them rely on welfare programs. And so I just start getting this really awful picture of what is actually happening. Kids are not learning and they're going through really horrible things, whether they're family related things or whether they're like 15 years old and they've been locked inside their room for a month and a half and they're just into these deep, dark depressions, telling me, like, come to class. I can't even get up to get a bowl of cereal to eat. Like, come to class. What are you talking about? Because like I had their numbers, they have phones. I'm trying to reach out to them. That's what we were told to do. We're like, you have a list of children and you need to call them every single day and see how they are. And so that just really started to radicalize me when I saw all these students. I mean, already I understood how the system was and there's all these things. There's only so much you can do. But when I saw especially like other teachers and the system just sort of being like, even though it's our job to take care of these children, we're just going to throw up our hands and we're going to pretend that we can't do anything and that we all just have to stay locked in our homes and open up next year. We don't even know if we can open up next year. And I'm thinking, like, of course we're going to open up next year. We have to. And I start doing podcasts. I start interviewing teachers about places that have opened. right? I go look for private schools, I look for places down south, and I'm like, tell me how you open, right? So I can tell other teachers out there that we can open, right? So in New York City, we actually did open hybrid, which kind of quelled me enough because I was going into work every day, I think except for Wednesdays. And I was seeing students face to face. And so I was like, okay, I'm doing my thing. This is good. And then they shut down the schools again. It was like this time, a little earlier, like mid-November 2021. No, 2020, mid-November 2020. And that just really set me off. So I immediately go online, I go onto Facebook, and I'm like, who else thinks closing down the schools again is a bad idea? And I find a Facebook page that's Keep NYC Schools Open, and it's parents. And they have a petition going around, and they have some other initiatives, and they have a rally. And so I signed the petition. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to the rally. And so I show up, and I'm, of course, the only teacher. And it's all these parents, and these parents are like, wait, you're a teacher? And you're here? And then I just got more involved with the organization, met the parents, continued to show up at the rallies. I would always take videos and I would post them to my Instagram. And I basically came to find out that there was one other teacher. So me and one other teacher out of like 150,000 teachers and employees of the New York City school system that was publicly willing to advocate for opening schools. So that was sort of like my beginning journey of going from being somebody who's like, I'm a history teacher, like I see all this advocacy stuff going on, but I'm definitely not an advocate. I'm not into advocacy. I'm not a social justice warrior. Like I'm here to teach history, both sides, and let my children decide. To then kind of like making this journey over into becoming sort of like an advocate, but what do they call it? Like a political activist, even like becoming an activist when I was so against that originally. Although I did not bring it into my classroom. Like I wasn't showing up in class and like telling my children like we should be in school, like open the schools. Like I just went taught my class regular as I normally did, and then like on my own personal free time in my own social media, I was doing the advocacy.
Let me interject real quick. Your reasons for wanting to keep the school open were what? Like you just felt like it's good mental health for your students, for kids to be able to keep going to school, and you weren't afraid of COVID? Like you didn't feel like it
Yeah,
was as
I just
great a
very
threat?
quickly realized that COVID actually wasn't this extraordinary virus, this new thing that we had never seen, that it was just more along the lines of like a bad flu year.
Yeah.
And that I could see that it was the propaganda and like the political um like motivations that were driving it. And then on top of that, I just saw like so many contradictory actions, right? I would see people on the one hand being like, oh, I'm so scared, I'm so scared, I'm so scared. But then like you see the way that they're actually moving through the world. And not everyone, like there were definitely like those people who were like just like I don't want to like name call, but like COVID freaks, I guess, like just like super hardcore, like all the way, But then for the most part, what I actually saw was people saying one thing about being so scared and like being like, oh, I hate Trump and because I'm in a blue place. So it's mostly like Trump hate, but
Hmm.
then a little bit like I know some Republicans too, like so like then they'd be like, oh, this is all the Democrats making Trump just look bad. So I could see that it was those things that were riling people up and not genuinely something going on. And then just on top of that, like, I mean, I'm a libertarian, so I'm not really like ideologically aligned with this idea that we should have public schools, but we do have this contract
Yeah.
with the current regime
Yeah.
that we're going to provide this public service. I felt very dedicated to that, and I felt like we should be out there. Like teaching is a young profession, we should be out there.
Okay. All right. So continue. All right. So your motivations were that one, you didn't think it was as big a deal as it should have been, that there was like politics involved that shouldn't have been there, sort of like a red flag for you. And also above all else, that like the kids really need to be back in school. This is really important thing for them socially, mentally, emotionally. All right. So continue.
So, all right, so doing all this advocacy to get the schools open, I did get in trouble at one point for posting on social media. It was about like apparently people had been sending a lot of my social media posts for a long time to my principal. And he was just sort of like freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. I mean, I don't know, maybe he should have told me, maybe he was right not to. But remember in the background is the whole like George Floyd, Derek Chauvin, Black Lives Matter thing going on. And again, in my opinion, I'm like, hold on, like everybody's in the I'm obviously like like I said, I'm a libertarian, so I'm no like pro police person. You know what I mean? And but I'm like, over one guy, we're all doing this while literally millions of children have not been in a classroom for almost a year at this point in many places. So it's like if you care so much about this one man who was obviously had addiction issues, right? That was putting him into a place where he could be so vulnerable to the police in this way. It's like we're making more of those. We're making more kids
Mm.
who are going to become addicts, who are not going to have the education that they need to go out into the world and use real money to make purchases and feel like they have to use counterfeit money. And so I made a tweet to the effect of like, well, now that we have justice for George Floyd, are teachers going to care about the millions of children that have been locked out of their classrooms for almost a year? Whew. Teachers, I had no idea, had social media accounts, were following me. At, literally, like half of my school was suddenly on my thread. I mean, my school isn't very big. We have like 35 teachers, like all these teachers out the woodworks. Anyway, so I got in trouble for that. I'm like, all right, I'm going to shut down my social media. That's what my principal told me because I was looking. New York State law is not very favorable to public employees and their free speech. It's very much like if your speech is causing problems at the workplace, then you don't have the right to say it. At least that's my understanding of it for when I looked into it because I was like, oh, I'm gonna sue them, but then I was like, I don't think I can. So I shut down my social media, or I went private, and also at this time my social media was called class disruption. So I don't think that helped me at all.
Oh, you are such a rabble rouser.
um Yeah, so there was that.
Okay.
And the school's open. Thank God the school's open. I'm like, great, and I was telling everybody, I was tweeting out, I'm like, go get your vaccine and get back to school. Because that's what the teacher said that they needed, right?
Yeah.
And then I start to realize, I'm like, oh no, like I think there's gonna be mandates, right? And then suddenly in summer, so August 2021 now, the New York City mayor, who was de Blasio at that time, announced mandates. And so, I mean, it was a hard decision in the fact that it's like, I've been doing this for 5 years or going on 6 years. I'm tenured. Like, I had envisioned, like I said, myself like climbing up the ladder and like doing the thing, like changing the system from the inside. But basically, as soon as they announced the mandates, I'm like, well, I'm not taking that shot. Like, there's literally nothing you can do to get me to take that. You not my son is over there. He said, not even $1 trillion, because that's like he's in that phase where he's like, for $1 trillion, would you break your arm? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll wait till somebody offers me $1 trillion. So like, you know. So no, not even for I can say with absolute certainty, not even for $1 trillion would I have taken that shot, or will I take that?
Okay. Oh, let's stop there for a second. Why not? Because we haven't talked about mandates. We haven't talked about your feelings on the vaccine. Why wouldn't you?
So I remember in May of 2020 when those first conspiracy theory videos came out about, oh, like Bill Gates is like making and I didn't like look too far into it, or like, like I know all that stuff is propaganda, so I wasn't really like, I don't know. I'm not like, oh, Bill Gates, he's the worst. I'm just like, I understand, I know. And But then, even then, I was like, if they do come out with something, there's no way. There's no way. Oh, hey, we just magically made this drug overnight and we're going to give it to the entire world. And we promise it's all good. Like, just on its face, no. I don't even have to get into anything about like the ethics of medical mandates. I don't even have to get into anything about the so called science. Like, it's just a ridiculous claim on its face. So, no.
Okay. Yeah, so just the very idea of a mandate of someone telling you what you need to put into your body in order to carry on with work, it's just a hard no already for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I would even say that it's in a definitely a different category than the childhood
Yep.
ones, although that certainly was a catalyst for me to then go and do that more deep dive diligent work
Yeah.
on these ones that have been around for a longer time, and there could potentially be, longer term, there could, and I say potentially is doing a lot of work in the sentence, there could potentially be studies that might show efficacy and safety.
Mhm.
Whereas like I think like this brand new thing that they're just like, oh, here, just take this brand new thing.
Right. Right. Okay. So August 2021, you're told you've got to take this thing in order to go back to work as a teacher in New York, and you're like, I'm not going to do that. What happens next?
So for the next couple of months, or yeah, almost 3 months, there's like a back and forth legal battle.
Okay.
There's, the unions are involved because it doesn't only impact the teachers, but the teachers were like the first ones, and then they expanded it out to all city employees. And so there was a number of lawsuits going on from a number of different directions. Rachel Maniscalco, she had filed one. She was another New York City teacher who was a big leader of the New York Freedom Movement, the anti-mandate movement out there. And then the unions actually did file a lawsuit. They kind of did like this joint lawsuit all together. I forget what they call themselves, AFCLIO or whatever they all team up. They use that name, and they made a lawsuit against the city as well. There were a couple delays in it, and so there was this hope. Like every time when you win, you're like, oh, like we're gonna keep our jobs, right? And meanwhile, also in New York City, there's 1,800 schools, right? So across 5 boroughs. And so, for example, in my school, there's only 35 teachers, but my school is actually in a building with 6 other schools. So, like, altogether, there are a decent amount of people. But I was the only teacher or staff member in my entire building, which was people might be familiar with Roosevelt High School in the Bronx, right across from Fordham University. That's where I worked. I was the only teacher out of everybody there that actually didn't take it
Wow.
or didn't take it. There may have been some that like got fakies or whatever.
Got it.
So it's a very like isolating experience. You're all spread out all across the city. Most schools only had like 1 or 2 or 3. Like I heard of one school that had like 10 or 20 people, but that was definitely just an like I can't
Outlier.
remember words right now.
Yeah, like an outlier
An
exception.
outlier,
Yeah.
thank you. So yeah, so it's this very isolating experience, but then you have all these legal battles going on. You're like, oh yes, okay, maybe. On social media, I'm getting flooded with support, so there's that aspect of it that was like really encouraging. I was doing a lot of media at the time because I couldn't. I was trying to get other people to go do it because I was getting so many requests for media, but so many people didn't want to do it because they were like, I'm fighting this, but I don't want to like put my name out there that I'm fighting this. I just want to be able to go back to work after this like it never happened.
Yep.
Whereas I was just like, well, you know, I'm either going to be right and my name is going to be out there and I'm going to keep my job, or I'm going to be right and I'm not going to keep my job. Like,
Yeah.
um, so wait, my battery, I don't have this plugged in. I thought this was plugged in. Um, Sorry, I don't want to cut out on you guys.
Take your time.
Yep.
This is not the right one. Okay, that's the. Okay. think we figured it out. Sorry, not a great angle. Okay. Okay, so all this is going on, there's court cases going on, and then finally it's like November 5th, 2021. Or was it that late? It was October 4th, maybe? No, it was November 4th, 2021. I had to like pack up all my things. And I had never still like let any of my political opinions like interject into my class. Except for this one final class, I made the decision that I was going to teach a lesson using my own personal experience of why I was being fired or why I was being put on leave without pay. And so I did this lesson that it was like starting with like John Locke and the theory of like, why would you want to have a government? And then and then we went up to like 9/11, and I was like, well, on 9/11, they took that idea and they were like, well, actually, we're just going to take a few more of your rights. And it was a big leap, of course, but I wanted to lay some theoretical groundwork. And then we did 9/11 and we did all of the rights they took away then. And then I jumped up to COVID and I was like, I think the same thing is happening right now, forcing people to take the shot. And I was like, this is not a personal opinion on anything that you may have done, because a lot of my students at that point had gotten the shot because they were high school students. A lot of their parents made them get it to go back to school. I was like, this is not, about what you may or may not have chose to done. This is the fact that the New York City the city of New York is saying I have to get this in order to keep my job. And I believe that is a violation of my rights, just in the same way that they did on 9/11 with overstepping in the security. And so that's why I'm standing up here making the statement here for you today and why I will not be here tomorrow. And yeah, so I got put on leave without pay. I had a little hope for a little while that we would get our jobs back, but quickly I realized that, you know what, even if we do get our jobs back, I don't want to go back there. Like, you don't go back to your abuser. You don't go back to the person who is like, um, threatening your bodily autonomy.
What was that last class like? Like, what was that interaction like with the students? How did they receive your message?
Um, I mean, I was able to like keep it pretty cool until the end, and then like in those last 5 minutes, I was like breaking down in tears. And I mean, they were new students. So like I had 10th graders, so weren't only in the building for half a year last year, but they did know me a little bit
Yeah.
from like my reputation and seeing me around. And then I had them for like a month and a half or so at the beginning of school, or however long, 2 months at the beginning of school. So we had like built up a relationship, and I never treated it like I was leaving. Like I always, like my dedication to the job was like I was going to be there the whole year. Um, and yeah, so it was like tearful, like a lot of children saying like, this isn't fair, this isn't right. Like, who do I need to call? Like, oh, I'm gonna go down to the principal. I'm like, it's not the principal at all. It's nobody in the school building, like this is much higher up than that. So it was definitely like emotional. I don't know what it was like after I left necessarily. Um, I know some, I have had like a couple of kids come back onto my social media, years later and be like, oh, I just want to let you know I still think about you, or like, what you did was right, things like that. But you can actually go watch me. I did a CNN. I did a live CNN interview. Uh, well, this one was right before my last class. So it was like eighth period, and I have the camera just like this set up in my classroom, and I'm like a little bit teary, and I'm like, pleading my case or giving my perspective to the CNN audience right before I go teach my last class. So if people are interested in seeing kind of like what my demeanor was like, you can go check that out.
Wow. Stephanie, you are an incredibly inspiring person. Your story is kind of remarkable. I know that during those years, those of us who held the line, so to speak, there was certain messaging I remember coming like, you know, fuck those people, like move on, find new friends, find a new job. Like that's all well and good, but easier said than done, to say the least, right? But having known you for a while now, you've done exactly that. Like, and I'd love to if you could tell us a little bit about how you ended up where you are now, which is a teacher again at the Lavender Village in Connecticut. Like, how did that all happen?
Yeah, so when you said the, making new friends and stuff thing, that actually made me think of that moment I got kicked out of the teacher group chat. Oh, it was like summer 2020, and I was like on my advocating for fully open schools, and I had put out a tweet, and I was like, I know for a fact there are teachers who went on vacation just last week and are now filling out the form to not have to teach in person. I didn't say any names. I have the screenshots, but I didn't say any names. And, suddenly I realized that my teacher group chat hadn't pinged in a while. And then it never pinged again. So, there was that. But I guess my thing has never been to like get angry at people. It's just been more to like remove my energy. No, I can't say I've never gotten angry. It's like probably like one of my exes come on here and be like, "That's not true." No, but in terms of like more professional or friendship relationships, it's just sort of my thing where it's like if it doesn't align, it doesn't align, and I'm just gonna like put my energy towards something else and towards other people and other places. So I kind of gracefully left that behind me. I think more or less gracefully. And right at the time when I realized that, I was like, all right, we're not getting our jobs back. And even if we do, I don't want to go back. I was like, well, I'm going to rebuild my life around homeschooling my son. I see the failures of the system. He was in a mask at that time, right? Because mask mandates were still going on. And so like, I'm like trying to fight for my job, like do all this advocacy, like, and every day I'm dropping him off at a place where they're masking him for 7 hours a day, so like I have this guilt.
Yeah.
And then I decide, so I decide I'm going to rebuild my life around homeschooling. So I never have to put my child at the whims of this arbitrary state power. And so my MO everywhere I go is just like, hey, I want to homeschool. Do you homeschool? Do you know anyone who homeschools? And literally everywhere I went, every conversation I had was just like, I want to find people who homeschool. And so people will be like, oh, I don't homeschool, but my friend does. Let me pass on your number. So I start getting in all these group chats. I emailed a few people who I knew like were kind of in that like freedom leaning community. I'm like, hey, who do you know who homeschools? And eventually I ended up at a table with my friend Natalie and a few other mothers, and we just started homeschooling our children together. I mean, they had been doing different things for a while, like since 2020, and but it was just more about like formalizing it, right? Because a lot of the homeschoolers, like they come, they go, you get a teacher, but then they don't show up and you can't pay them. So she was like, hey, like I'm trying to find a group of people that will commit to a full year at a certain price point so that I know that we can pay the instructors that we have come in to teach. And I'm like, yes, like I thought I was going to be the teacher at first, but then I started filming my documentary, 15 days. Right. And so we had gotten a decent amount of funding for that where I could pay my bills off of that. And that was like, I was really obviously dedicated to that because I had fought to open schools. I had fought to get the masks off. And throughout that time, I had been kind of building up my content creator just skills and experience, and I really loved making content. And so when Natalia Marukver, the producer of the film, the executive producer and creator of or founder of Restore Childhood, she was like, hey, like I know you make this content, I'm trying to make a documentary, what equipment do you need? Let's travel around the country and do this. And I was like, yes, let's do it. So I was committed to doing that for at least the next year or two. And my son is like, no, it's still going on. But it did come out. The documentary did come out like 2 months ago at the end of September. So like I guess it's just over a month or so ago. or no, 2 months ago now. You can see it over on X, or just go to 15daysfilm.com and you can see my film there. It's about the school shutdowns and why they happen so long, and I think maybe we'll get a little more into it. But I just wanted to give my little plug there.
Mhm.
So I needed a situation where I could kind of like, have some activities where my son was dropped off for a certain period of time. And I knew that he was getting a good education and being watched after well. Um, and so, yeah, that's how it started. It started. And so it just started with my friend being like, hey, I have a house and we can use this space. I know some instructors who we can hire, and we put together a schedule with these instructors and with some different activities. Like on Thursdays, she would bring the boys to parkour, right? And so it's like, I have this amazing friend who is like, don't worry about it. I'll take the boys for the day. I'm not working, you're working, just building that community is really how I was able to do it, because I am a single mom. I have to work, I have to pay my bills. Um, and so, yeah, we just built up this community, built up this network. You make connections, you find people who bring different things to the table, and then you find yourself on an almost 12-acre farm teaching a bunch of children whose parents homeschool them. So I teach classes and my main target audience is homeschool children.
That's where you are now. That's Lavender Village.
Yes, and that's where I am now. And that's kind of like the short story of how I got there. Is just like deciding I wanted to do it, taking the leap, building a bond with other people who also wanted to do this thing, and then just saying, well, what can I bring to the table? What do you have? So in my case, I have the teaching background. I have a lot. I can basically do anything. I'm not trying to brag, but like literally, like what needs to be done? Like, oh, the sink is clogged, I got it. Like, oh, like whatever it is, like we need to write a curriculum, oh, I got it. Like, oh, we need to film something, I got it. In the most humble way ever. I'm trying to say that. But yeah, and then you have people who have a vision and who are crazy enough to tell you can do it.
Yeah, well, that's what I find so inspiring. I mean, you're very tenacious, very capable, in your attitude, like, you're always smiling. I mean, maybe when we're not hanging out, you're not always smiling, but whenever
Yeah.
I'm around you, you're always smiling, and it's very, contagious, to use that word.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
but it's amazing how you are a shining example of that thing I mentioned earlier. Like, well, you know, move on and find new friends and find a new job. Well, it doesn't always happen that easily. And it wasn't not that it was easy for you, but like, I think your attitude was just like, I'm, I'm sticking to my convictions. Like I have an
Yeah.
intuition. I see this for what it is. And you just like boldly, proceeded. I didn't
Well,
realize
oh,
that
sorry.
the film, I'd love to talk about the film a little bit more. Like,
Yeah.
I love knowing that that was a paid gig because I mean, I just assumed that anything labor of love, which is most of my life, is not a paid thing. So it really warms my heart to know that that was a gig for you. Like that's a gig
Yeah,
that
no,
really
thank
grew out of
God.
it grew out of your convictions. It's amazing.
Yeah. So Natalia, I had met Natalia at one of the first rallies for open schools, and she always saw me out there with my camera. And she had raised a little bit of money to do like an anti-masker campaign. And so we did that. It went really well. And off of that, she was able to raise more money. And she knew that, I had lost my job also. That was a big thing. It's like she didn't like the mandates either. And she was like, well, here's this amazing teacher who fought for the children who then got turned around and, fired. Like, I want
Yeah.
to hire her. And
Yeah.
I know she can do anything. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was an amazing thing that sort of came out of this for sure, and I'm super grateful for that. The other thing I think too is like I think about it as sort of like the anti-social warrior like attitude, because I think that like socialist types, like leftists and libertarians actually have a lot in common, but it's then what they choose to do with that, right? So I find like leftists often engage a lot in like this politics where it's like the system owes you. Like you're owed something for this from the system because you were wronged, right? And so it's like whereas like I see those wrongs and I'm sort of like the system's never going to give me anything. I'm the only one who can then go and correct it. Right. And this is in personal relationships too, like people are mean to you, they steal things from you, they use you. And at the end of the day, you can't control them. You can only control what you do. And so that's sort of my attitude is like, yeah, there's a lot of messed up things in the world. I don't like what the government does, but I'm not going to change the government unless I want to make it bigger. Like, unless I want to start like getting out my own little fund of money coming towards me. Yeah, I can only change myself. So that's sort of where that attitude comes from.
Were
Well, that's
you
sorry, Mike,
libertarian? Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, it seems like the leftist is more like this victim mindset, really, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm a victim, things are happening to me. Whereas your approach is I'm going to take charge. I am empowered.
right.
I have
It's
agency.
grievance politics. That's what it is.
Grievance politics. Interesting.
And I'm
Yeah.
not, I just grievance, it doesn't work. Like other people really don't owe you anything,
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah, there's that.
you exude
And you were gonna say
agency.
if I was a libertarian beforehand or like where that came
Yeah,
from?
well, a lot of people's politics did change, during or with the advent of COVID. Is that true of you, or were you already sort of in that space of libertarianism?
I was definitely already sort of in that space. I was definitely still super mainstream in a lot of ways, but I had never voted for a president that was either Republican or Democrat. I either didn't vote, and then I think I learned about Gary Johnson like in college, and I joined the Libertarian Club, and then I had all these like weird autistic guys like teaching me all like the Ron Paul theory and stuff. And I would show up every single week. I'm just like the girl like in the room with all these weird guys. Like, um, for real though, like, and I ended up changing it to like the alternative political society because I was like trying to like broaden the base a little bit. But I had definitely always been alternative politics. And we used to team up with like the socialists to do stuff all the time because they had the money.
Strange bedfellows, right?
Yeah, but I mean, when the topic is just like hating the government, it's fine. As long as you don't start to talk about, solutions, it's all good.
Yeah.
Like Occupy Wall Street was going on at that time. So we
Yeah.
had a lot of like common hate for like big business and government screwing the people over.
Yeah. 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 Let's, if we could for a second, go back to the film and just linger on that for a minute.
Yeah.
So you, other than you like going around on the streets with your camera, filming the activism aspect of the shutdowns, like you don't have a background in directing, right? Or like cinematography.
No.
Okay. So you're approached by this executive producer and you're asked to basically direct this film.
Well, she's the director for
She's the
sure.
director.
So,
Okay.
we had built up a relationship through advocacy. So, like, she has two daughters who were in the New York City public school system, and she was fighting so hard to get the schools open. She was always one of the big coordinators around getting press there, doing like the social media stuff. And so we had developed a relationship. It wasn't just sort of like out of the blue. Um, but yeah, so and she had just seen me like at that time I was just using my phone. I was just going around with my phone, taking videos on my phone. I did most of my editing at that time on my phone. I was getting into Adobe a little bit. I would do some stuff on Adobe, bigger projects. Um but yeah, like she just sort of like saw my dedication to the topic, knew I was on the ground, knew I had the like this versatile skill set, and was just like, hey, I know you lost your job. And we did smaller projects first. Like I said, we did that anti-mask stuff and it went really well. The video went super viral. It had like hundreds of thousands of views across the different platforms. And so off that we were able to, or I shouldn't say she did the money raising. She did all the public relations type thing. I did the camera, the video work, and workshopping ideas and strategy.
Yeah, and so okay, so you're doing a lot of the camera work. You have input into like sort of the direction and the message of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so tell us more about the film because it came out a month ago. It's viewable on your website. It's also I think you launched exclusively on X. It's a full length documentary. What can
Yeah.
the audience member like? Why should they watch it? What are they going to learn? What are they going to see that they haven't already seen or understand?
I always knew that parents and families who went through that experience would appreciate the film, right? As sort of a vindication, right, of their experience. And then also a vindication of one of the big reasons we knew it was happening, which is, spoiler alert, the teachers' unions. So you can watch the film, obviously, for our full argument as to how they did it and why they did it. Um, so I always knew that group of people, and then sort of like the people who were like real COVID warriors would appreciate it. What I've come to learn is that people who weren't old enough to have kids or were too old to have kids in that age group did not really realize that experience of the children.
Yeah,
And so I think it's especially important for people who are just having children, who are getting to that school age, who did not have children in school during COVID, to watch this film.
yeah,
Not just because of you're going to see the experience, but because it really opens the door to who is pushing the buttons and turning the keys in the education system generally.
yeah,
Because as you're going to see, the amount of money that the unions got the federal government to pour into the education system, of course, that there was those one-time COVID payments, but
mhm,
now that ups the level of funding, right, that is required to go forward, and it increases their own power to then make moves to get more funding into the system.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I think parents, if especially if you're going to send your children to public school, need to watch this film to understand who is really making the decisions about what your child's teacher is teaching, the influences that that teacher has, because a lot of times if you're just like looking at the content, like, okay, some of it is bad, right? Like the DEI stuff, like we can all, we're like, oh, that's not great. But like some of it is just like history, like regular history that you or I might have learned, but it's how the teachers are being trained to teach it.
mm,
It is the attitudes that they're being influenced to come in with. There's a like a whole culture around it. And the people who basically determine what that is the teacher unions.
got it. Yeah,
So
okay.
that's why you should watch the film, is to like, even if you're like like what, there was another teacher from Oakland who's in the film, and she used to be a big lefty. She was like the union rep in her school. Like almost too pro union, she even said, right? And this is even for people who think just like on the face, like Natalia. Natalia is a Democrat, like through and through. Like she voted for Biden in 2020, you know, and she thought the teachers unions were on her side. Why not? Right? The teachers are my, they teach my children. Of course, I want my teachers well taken care of. I want them to have good salaries and good benefits, and I want their workplace to be comfortable and be provided for. Why wouldn't I support the teachers unions? Well, because that's not what the teachers unions do. They don't
Mm.
protect teachers in the workplace. Or at least that's not, that's a very small portion of what they might do.
And okay, so the full title of this documentary is 15 Days: The Real Story of America's Pandemic School Closures. And the project sits under this umbrella, Restore Childhood.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So Restore Childhood is a nonprofit organization that was founded by Natalia Marukver, who's the director and executive producer of 15 Days,
Mm,
and another mother, Dana Hensley. And they formed this in the midst of the pandemic because they saw that all these other so-called child-facing or child-centered nonprofits were the ones who were pushing the madness. They were being like, "Oh yeah, mask your kid. No problem," right? Um, "Oh, it's not really a big, nobody was, no experts were coming out to advocate for school openings. Um, so it came out as sort of an organization, as a way to step up and do those types of things. And in the beginning, kind of did everything because that's what we had to do during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So from like the advocacy stuff of making the rallies and the protests, getting the politicians, meetings with the politicians, doing the social media stuff, and then also doing the videos on top of that. And sort of as we went on, what we really realized, because I started to work for Restore Childhood, is that the storytelling is like really what's needed. Because we can yell and scream like facts and numbers all we want at the top of our lungs. Like those are all good and well. But what really moves people are real stories of real people, especially stories about children. So like we said, we had a lot of success with the anti-mask campaign. Uh, we had like a little boy who has food allergies and he had to wear a mask, and they didn't see that he was having an allergic reaction, right? And he went into like anaphylaxis shock, and his mom had to like come and bring him to the emergency room. A little boy who's has a speech delay, getting speech lessons with a mask on, like crazy things that everyday normal people would just be like, wow, that's insane,
Yeah.
right? And whereas like when you see statistics, it's just numbers.
Yeah.
But one story about one person can really change a person's heart and perspective forever.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, say what you will about Children's Health Defense and that whole organization, but I think the brilliance of the Vaxxed documentaries and the bus was just getting families and children who had been injured on that bus to tell their stories. That moves.
Right.
That's what is actually going to move the needle on anything, and it's an incredible approach.
Yeah, and what I'd really love is to turn this into a museum where we can have like the full interviews of everyone who we interviewed, because in the movie there might be like 20 characters, something like that, but we have like 60 something interviews.
Yeah.
So there's so many people who, just for the sake of like making a movie that kind of like makes sense and tells the story, that we couldn't include.
Yeah.
And so I would love to put all of those interviews up, and then I would love to have other people be able to submit and just like keep growing this museum.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds like you've got some more editing in your future, Stephanie, huh? You better dust off the Adobe Premiere.
I don't know. I'm hoping to get into a place where like maybe I can pay somebody else to do that.
Yes, there you go. That's when you know you've made it. I have an editor. And now, okay, so now you're teaching Liberty. You got teachingliberty.org is this other hustle of yours, this other project of yours. Tell us
Oh,
about that.
actually, you should just find me on Instagram. I got rid of teachingliberty.org.
Okay, you got rid of
I'm
it.
making some changes. Find me on Instagram or on TikTok at Teaching Liberty.
And that's okay. So tell us about that.
So remember back in 2021 when I was told to shut my social media down or like close it off and make it private? I did that. And after like a month or so, I was like playing around with new names. And at first I was like Teacher for Liberty. And then I don't know, and then I just changed to Teaching Liberty because I felt it like had a little bit of ring to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still private, but then once they announced the mandates, I was like, well, I'm either gonna be right and get fired. In that case, it doesn't matter if my account's public, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna be right and not get fired. So it doesn't matter if my account's public because I was right about this very, controversial topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I made my account public again, even though I was still employed and still working at the same school. I didn't go to my principal and ask for permission.
Mm-hmm.
I just did it because I was like I said, I'm either going to be right and get fired anyways or be right and keep my job.
Yep.
And then I'll fight the social media thing after that. So I went public and I'm getting like pouring in followers at this time, you know. Um and yeah, and then I just start posting like whatever I'm going through, whatever advocacy thing. And I mean, relatively speaking, now my account doesn't have a lot of activity, but back then I was getting tens of thousands of views on like most of my videos, pretty consistently. And like when I would go live, you know, I'd have like hundreds of people in my live and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just go on there and whatever the issue is, usually related to like COVID or masking or mandates and like the like political stuff, trying to make sense of politics. And then more recently, I sort of have shifted teaching liberty away from politics, which sort of follows, of course, my own journey because I am the niche. And um, I guess the same way that I sort of feel like it doesn't matter how much energy you give to this issue. It's just like you're always going to be fighting. That's what the system wants. It doesn't matter if you're in the resistance, right? You're still giving the system your energy.
Mhm.
And you're not actually creating an alternative. It's like you're waiting to create the alternative until the system gives you permission, but the system's never going to give you permission, right? And of course, it didn't happen overnight. It was this transition that slowly happened as the Lavender Village came to life. I mean, I can't really take any credit for the creation of the Lavender Village. Like, that was 100% my friend Natalie. And, you know, she was the crazy one who said, "We're doing this, we're getting this, we're opening this." She asked me to be on the board, and I was like, "Sure, I'll be on the board." But at that time, I was like in the middle of making my documentary and like fighting to pay my bills every month. So I'm like, you know, like there's only so much I can do, but you need 3 people. You see, I'm dedicated, like I'll do it. And so I'm like working on the documentary. Then that kind of like winds down and I start doing other little projects with like local politics, you know, getting some paid gigs and stuff. And then Natalie calls me and she's like, "Oh, the teacher who I had lined up, like, it's not going to work out. Like, you know, they're supposed to get back to me with this and back to me with that. And like now I can't get in contact with them at all. And like we're opening in a month." And I was like, "Well, I'm a teacher and I need a job." And then I became the teacher right there on that phone call. And that really like showed me this other way that you can like do politics, this other route, right? It's not being a Democrat, it's not being a Republican, right? Because I had gone from being an independent to being a Republican to being a Democrat and like over the COVID years.
Mhm.
So I was like trying to figure out which team, which strategy works, you know? And I'm like, none of it works. They're all just stealing your time and your energy. And so then, yeah, as I made this shift to realizing that, like, hey, politics isn't the answer, you got to create your own thing, the content on Teaching Liberty shifted as well.
Mhm.
And that's the content you will find today of more like, I'm farming, I'm cooking, I'm being a mom, I'm giving just like timeless, evergreen, philosophical thoughts. I mean, I'll let you be the judge of how deep they are. Um,
Yeah,
But yeah, like you're not gonna you used to come to my page, like if you wanted to know, like, hey, is the thing that they said on the news, what's the full context? But now if you come to my page, you will definitely not see that. You're gonna see like how I am actually living free,
yeah.
right? Teaching liberty. Like I am actually living free by homeschooling my son and creating this community where children who otherwise would not be able to receive an education in a space with other children, right? Because we're here in the state of Connecticut and we have no religious exemptions. I'm giving these people a place to be that is outside. Obviously, we're still in the system. We still work within this bureaucracy to the extent we have to. Um, and yeah, I'm just trying I'm creating my own timeline. That's been sort of like what I've been saying lately.
Yeah, I think what we talk about this so often, and we are adjacent to folks who talk about it so often, just creating that parallel civilization, creating that parallel system. Don't spend your time trying to tear down the old one. Create the new one. And what you've done is like this like stepping stone. You've acknowledged that to an extent you're still having to exist within elements of the system, but you've created this stepping stone away from it, you know? And I think that that's ultimately if we step back and go, okay, we're not going to get there in a generation. We can't expect any little pocket of us within one generation to fully get out. I don't think that that's possible, but we can say in the larger picture, we can take a stepping stone. We can do these little stepping stones, document our process so that like our kids then go the next step and can go the next step. Like
Right.
no,
Yeah,
no,
liberty is a cultural thing, it's not a political thing.
yeah, and you've done that, you're embodying that, and I think that's so remarkable. What's so remarkable about your journey, this school is not really a school, is it? It's like a
It's not a
homeschool,
school, it's not a school.
it's a collective, right? It's sorta like a homeschool group, but a
So we
place.
we are a church. So we are a church.
Yeah,
We're actually a Society of Friends meeting house, and we offer classes. So our classes are 2 hours long, and the families can come and take them. So it was like we're definitely not a school.
yep,
We're like yeah, like I said, we're a church. We have twice a week, or no, I'm sorry. In the summer we were doing twice a week. Now we're once a week on Tuesdays. We have our worship, and then the second Sunday of every month we have a worship and a business meeting for our members.
mhm.
And it's very like the spiritual side of things is very much imbued into like all the work that we do.
That's incredible, and with that then, that perspective, what was your, like, spiritual upbringing or your religious upbringing? Like, what on the side of spiritualism do you bring into this endeavor, the lavender?
So like I said, we're a society of friends meeting house. People might know them more colloquially as the Quakers. And um they're basic so they have 6 testimonies. It's like peace, integrity, stewardship, simplicity, and I'm missing 2 other ones. They'll come to me. But just like these basic things, and then also that every individual has their own connection to God or to source or to like whatever that you wanna call it.
I love that.
And so as we were on this journey trying to figure out how we're going to create this community, we there's actually a lot of like meeting houses around here and a lot of Society of Friends history. I mean, it's just actually like Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
And what's that guy's name? Penn. I forget his first name. He was a member of Society of Friends, and they had a big influence on like religious freedom. And so as we're kind of like, because religious freedom is our main thing, religious and medical freedom. So like as we're on this journey to connect, we kept running into Society of Friends, and just kind of like very naturally came to us, and just on our own, we had always kind of had that idea of like we're individually connected with God. And so then it just like was this perfect fit for us. And so personally, I actually grew up Jewish. I grew up going to synagogue, Sunday school, made my bat mitzvah when I was um 13 years old. And I kind of had gotten away after that. I kind of gotten away from organized religion, but then in college, I would go to the I forget whatever they called it, like Young Jewish Center or something like that. And they would do like Friday night um Shabbat dinners and offer different programming. Cause all throughout my life, even when I wasn't like going to synagogue, it's always like you can always spot the Jew in the room, like as a fellow Jew. I don't know. And or it's just like a really bonding thing. And I mean, I live in a part of the country, it's like there's a lot of Jews everywhere compared to other parts at least. And then I went to Israel, and I actually went to the West Bank on my trip when I was in Israel. And so I like got a whole different perspective on that side of things, you can say. Where I mean, if you want to label it, you can just say I'm like on the pro-Palestine side of things after having that experience and going in not really knowing much about it other than having this background of like having Judaism always tied to like, oh, the existence of the state of Israel, and like we need to have the state of Israel to protect Jews. Um
Was that a sorry to interrupt, was that a birthright trip to Israel?
so I tried to go on Birthright, but it was too late. So like I had like kind of like a rough start to college, and like before going to college I told my parents I wanted to do a gap year, and they're like, no, da 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 da. Long story short, I ended up doing a gap year. And it didn't happen quite in the way that they would have liked my first year to go. So, but this was just a trip. I actually did what's called the kibbutz program. So I went and I first I did 2 weeks of being like a tourist with my dad and my sister, because like they had never been. Um, and so he took me and my sister over. My mom stayed, like my other sister was quite young at the time, so they stayed back. And and that's when I went to the West Bank, was like with my dad and my sister, like as a tourist. And then I did this kibbutz program. So I like lived on a kibbutz and I worked on a kibbutz, which if people don't know, that's actually how Israel was founded, was like communes,
Mhm.
because they're all like people, like they were communists from Russia and they like basically chose between being Bolsheviks or coming to Israel and starting a radical movement there. But they're all capitalists now, of course, because communism doesn't work. And I worked on a kibbutz. I think, where am I going with this? Yeah. And then I came back home and I was like, oh, like the state of Israel is like a state. That has nothing to do with my religion.
Yeah.
And then I started going to Chabad during COVID, right? Because I kind of like came back into being like, I have always had this deep connection of like, I believe in God, but like the religion stuff never stuck for me. But I was feeling really called to it. And there was a Chabad, which, if people don't know what that is, it's like when you see the people that are dressed up with like the black suits and like the long hair and the hats, they run those, the Chabads. But they create this very liberal environment. Not liberal as in like Democrat, but liberal as in like, we're super religious, but like if you want to come dressed like that and show up, and or even risque, like girls would show up like, in just like regular clothes, um fine, like come, like we just want Jews, like we want to bring Jews together in whatever form they are. We're going to do our super religious thing and we hope some of it rubs off on you. And their number one thing is that every individual has a connection with God.
Mm.
So that super resonated, and they didn't make me wear a mask or ask for a vaccine pass, because those were two big things that basically every other place was asking for.
Yeah.
So I started going again to Chabad during COVID, and then like basically after October 7th, it was really hard for me to go back, because it was just like, yeah, I just felt like we were in two different worlds, in the way that they felt like their Judaism was being attacked and like anti-Semitism was everywhere, and all these like weird political interpretations of why those things were happening over there. And I couldn't do it, because it just realized that I just felt like the whole Chabad thing, it's just about supporting Israel. It's not about the religious part or
Yeah.
even your own individual connection with God. It all just became about like supporting the state of Israel
Yeah.
and conflating religion and God and Israel and the state. A state.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the path that you've chosen has led you right back to this society of friends,
Right,
which also
exactly.
holds this individual connection to God as like a pillar.
Right. And it was sort of like this transition where I was like looking for it, and this one way wasn't working out. And at the same time, I'm having all these conversations and discussions with my homeschooling friends as we're trying to set up this other thing. And so I still identify as Jewish. Like I still very much, if somebody asks me like, what are you? I'm like, oh, I'm Jewish. Um, but I'm also a member of the Church of the Society of Friends.
Yeah.
And I don't see those two things as conflicting.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you've certainly wandered like a Jew, right? I mean, come on. Look at the look at your journey. Incredible. It's incredible. Yeah.
Yes,
Well, so
hopefully I can get into the land of milk and honey with a little bit less the G word.
well, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? What does the future hold for you?
So I definitely see myself at the Lavender Village.
Mhm.
Um I mean, right now I'm doing like a lot of teaching and a lot of tutoring because I'm trying to dig myself out of sort of, I lost my job. So I had a little bit of savings that I kind of like burned through. And then, you rack up a little bit of credit card debt and stuff like that. So I'm like trying to dig myself out of a little bit of that right now. I'm like working a lot, but in 5 years, I see myself definitely at the Lavender Village. I mean, my son, he's going to be in high school, in his high school years, a teenager. So doing some sort of hybrid, like he's going to be working and taking some classes and doing some stuff around the village. And then hopefully for me, I will have, turned on that social media money making machine which I'm trying. That's what I'm like really doing right now is I'm like, all right, like I have, 12,000 followers. I have the ability to make good content. How can I, like, I'm a teacher, like I can sell my knowledge. How can I actually like monetize this in a way where I can be scaling a little bit, right? Because I can't just be like selling my hour for $50 out here and dig myself out of this hole and try to do a little bit better for myself. So making more money
Yep.
on social media and growing the Lavender Village.
Love it.
How has Caleb enjoyed the homeschool ride?
Well, at this point he doesn't know any, he did a year of public school, but he doesn't really know what it's like. It was kindergarten. So um
And was that the year in a mask in kindergarten?
yeah, and it was a year in the mask in kindergarten, so like that's like his memory of public school.
Yeah.
He's never asked to go back. He's never like, "Oh, I want to go back to school."
Right.
Um, Oftentimes he'll make comments about like, "Oh, if they do that in public school, like I definitely don't want to go," or
Sure.
um, "You can tell those kids are public school kids." Like he's so funny sometimes. Um, but yeah, no, I think he definitely enjoys being, our children spend hours outside every day, even when it's cold and the weather's not so great. We have many acres, so they have lots of free reign to run around. I mean, we have boundaries and um my child, when my child is under my supervision, I allow him to have a pretty wide range over the farm and stuff. Um and Yeah, I don't know, like, even on days when other children get off from school, like, they'll wanna not do classwork, but they still wanna go to the Lavender Village. They don't wanna just, like, be at home.
Yeah. They
So,
want that
I
community.
think yeah, and he loves to tell people that he's doing, like, a 5th grade math book, even though he's only technically, like, in 4th grade, so
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
things like that.
It's inspiring. You've really. It's funny because when you first showed up at the Hoot, probably 20. What was Ben? What was the year we did Healers and Growers? I think it was that year.
It was 22, I think, because I met Elizabeth when I lost my job. Elizabeth, Queen Bee's Pharmacy, she was on
Yep,
a few episodes
yep.
ago. Shout out to her.
And you were hanging out with
She
Danny Perrott as well, right?
Yeah, but I know them all through Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Like I met Elizabeth from like a mutual friend on social media who was like, you should reach out to Elizabeth. We did like religious exemption classes. She's actually the person who I made the most money with online, because we did a bunch of classes and yeah, and then she was like, "Oh, you got to come to the Hoot." We did some camping trips together. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so she
Well, you
introduced
showed
me to
up,
you
and I was
guys,
like,
to
"That's
Danny.
that Teaching Liberty chick at the Hoot." I mean, that's how I knew you. I knew you from your social media.
Oh, you knew me before I even came there?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Well, and Ben knows this, and our listeners know this. Like, I've been trying to pull more quote freedom people into the Hoot community, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's working!" Like, Teaching Liberty's here.
Oh,
That was
that's
a big
so
moment for me.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, you have Liz to thank for that.
Yep. Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I love how aligned everything is with like the Hoot. Like your guys' website is hoot.love. And then independently from that, my friend Natalie made the website thesociety.love, right? She didn't know you guys, didn't know anything about you. And just like so many of your songs that you guys have on this latest album are just like that world, that's not my world. I'm over here creating my own world. Or the red pill song, the where you guys are saying, show us how good it can get. Like that's literally verbatim something that we say all the time. It's like one of our catchphrases. And then you come along and you're like, hey, we made a song that's perfectly for you. And I'm like,
The apocalypse is leaving. That's a Jude Roberts song. Yep.
yeah. And it's so cool that like I get to be like, oh, here's this music I love, this band I love. Oh, can you come play a private show for me and my friends at our village? Like it's so cool. And it also like ups my cool points with all my friends because I'm like, yeah, I did that.
Well, it's a blessing for us too, because to find like-minded communities that will really resonate with that music is not as easy as you might think. So very grateful. But again, like even like Free State of Mind, Not My World, like so many songs on the new Mammals album are really written for you, like for you
Yeah,
and
Free
in
State
this.
of Mind.
Yeah,
That's one of my faves.
yeah. But it's a special set of people who have gone through what we all went through that those songs are really derived from and sung for. So I'm glad it's been received.
I receive it with love.
Yes, I know you do. Thank you.
And like so many others, you've taken what was a really shitty hand during COVID and you've really pivoted and you've turned it into something positive.
Yeah, I'm yeah, extremely grateful for how it all worked out for sure. And I know for some people, I know teachers who, lost their houses because they weren't able to pay their mortgage and had to move out of state. I know teachers who um, had to really scramble because when they lost their health insurance, one of their children who had a disease or some type of sort of illness that needs daily care was, scrambling for figuring out how to take care of their child. So I feel really grateful that I came into it with the ability to make the pivots that I did and end up where I am. And I try to not be resentful for all the people who I know weren't not resentful at those people, but resentful for like the government and everybody who kept the pandemic going and knowing how much harm it caused people.
Yeah. It's not a useful emotion in the long term, is it?
It creeps up on you,
It
but
does.
you got to put it back in its place for
Yeah.
sure because it is not useful indeed.
Yeah. Stephanie, as we come to the end of this awesome conversation, we've got to ask you the question that we ask all our guests, and that is, what are your non-negotiables, the daily habits that you do to tend to your terrain?
So definitely every morning trying to either get up and stretch or get up and go to the gym. So like on my days that I don't go to the gym, I try to get up and stretch and move my body at least. And so there's that. And then the other one is protein, just like really trying to make sure that I'm getting, I mean, ideally, I'd love to get 150 grams of protein a day. I can't say I always get it, but protein and moving my body.
Love it. Simple. And Stephanie, what are some of your go-to book recommendations for the listener who wants to learn a little bit
Yes.
more?
So one of my favorite books is A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, yeah.
It's just really been resonating with me a lot this past year, and I think that's what really started to get me to say like I'm making my own timeline. So they do a lot of like space travel. It's such a good one. It's an easy read. You're supposed to read it when you're in like late, I think early high school.
Yeah.
And then another one that I love is right here. What is History? This is a great book because it teaches you how to read history. It teaches you how to think about history. It teaches you to approach any text and really understand that it's just a person making things up. I mean, some stuff is more credible than others. And then economics in one lesson. And it's kind of a long book, but you can literally just read like one chapter and it's just the same lesson over and over in a lot of different ways, like trying to answer to people's objections. But yeah, these are two that I go to constantly because I think a lot of times people kind of like operate up here like, oh, like I have all this information, I have all this information, but what they don't actually have are principles on which they're able to categorize and analyze that information in a meaningful way. And so it leads us to have things like the Republican and Democratic Party literally have no base value on which their like policy proposals come from.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself a more a Mrs. Who, Mrs. Which, or a Mrs. What's It?
That's a good question. Oh man. Um I mean, I would see myself as sort of like the younger, which one's the one that's like still trying to figure it out cuz she's a little bit younger?
Yeah, she's like a little naive. I can't remember. I don't know which one's which.
Yeah, yeah, like, I think I'm still probably there, you know?
Okay.
Like, I get some things,
Yeah.
but, like, I'm still definitely, like, looking up to my people who've been in the freedom community, you know, like Mike, Elizabeth, Natalie, like, all these people who have really shown me the way, like, I know things, I follow my intuition, but I'm still humble to the fact that I have some, a few thousand years to go until my skills can really, like,
I
you
love
know,
that.
have us traveling through space.
I think one of the things I really love about that book, as I read it reread it as an adult to my, then I guess I read it to Grayson at 6 years old, was the cautionary tale. They go to this planet to rescue her dad, the professor, and that planet has been taken over by this big brain, and it's like the centralized brain that does all the thinking. Everyone just sort of falls into step, and you look around like suburbia, because I think that's one of they describe walking down the street, and all the children come out at the same time, and they're all jumping rope at the same time, and the boys are bouncing the ball in unison, and like any break, any departure from that routine gets spotted by the collective. And then there's that part, and then I think when they were leaving Earth, they look back and there's this dark cloud that's sort of like coming towards Earth, and that darkness is going to happen over our planet. And I reread that as an adult during COVID or right after COVID, and I'm just like, this book needs to be read by everybody, because we are so in danger of becoming that planet where the dad gets trapped. And also there's a dark cloud that seems to be covering us right now. Like,
Yeah.
and anyway, yeah, remarkable book.
Yeah, yeah, it's like all the children are bouncing the ball at the same time, except for that one, and they're like, "Oh." And, it made me think, oh, what did it make me think? I forget. Anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. And last question, Stephanie, where can the listener learn more?
Yeah, you can find me on social media, mainly on Instagram and TikTok at Teaching Liberty. So just all one word, Teaching Liberty. And you can also view my film, or it's Restore Childhood film, but that I was the cinematographer of at 15daysfilm.com.
Got it.
I also made that website. So
Love it.
there's
Love it. Stephanie Edmonds, thank you so much for joining us on the Terrain Theory podcast.
thank you guys for having me. It was wonderful.